Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhritavigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tang Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha.
Namaste everyone, and welcome to our study of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. We have covered two categories in the first 10-12 verses, that to do with the objective material world, the Kshetra, the field, and also the knowledge that will lead to the Kshetrajna, or the Supreme Self. And then we attempted to go through the verses that describe what is that Kshetrajna, the knower, which Sri Krishna says, I am that Kshetrajna, the consciousness in us. And we found out that it is trying to do something that is not possible. In the sense, the knower cannot be known. So whatever words, nouns, pronouns, adjectives that we use, they will only make a representation in our mind. It won't be the reality to be experienced. We call that in the scriptures vritti jnana. Vritti is a thought wave, an idea. So many ideas we build around in a subject, and we might think that we know it, but really what we know are the contents of our mind in relation to that particular object. That is possible when we are dealing with external things like a tree or a cat or plant. We describe the various features and we can say that we know quite a bit about that particular object. But when it comes to knowing the Kshetrajna, the knower itself, that is not possible. So what is the utility of all these discussions about the Kshetrajna? Its utility is that it gives a reflection of the self. So today, before we dive deeper into those sutras, where the challenge is to use the language where the opposites are used. It's smaller than the smallest, larger than the largest. In that way, basically, that doesn't tell anything. When you try to construct an idea with that type of description in your mind space, you sort of land into an abstraction. It's not like that's a tree and you immediately have a picture of the tree in your mind. So that is because it's not possible to know the knower in the sense of knowing, but it can, the supreme reality can be experienced. In other words, it is the subject. Knowing is objectification. Okay, that's a definition. Swami Vivekananda in his complete work says, when we know something, we objectify it. But the subject can never be objectified. If we do that, it won't be a subject anymore. So, right in the beginning, it's very important to understand that the Atman will never be known as things we know outside, but there is another meaning, another purpose of all this study, and that's what we're trying to get into. So today, I'll take a little bit of time to explore this, what we call the mind space. And once we know the mechanics and things that are happening in there, then we will see how this mind itself can become the tool to self-knowledge, because that's what we have. And if we do not know how something functions, knowledge is power. If we know how something functions, we can engineer it, we can use that science of that knowledge to our benefit. And if we do not know, then we are at its mercy. So this mind space, many times we ask some devotees to come, okay, what is the mind? And they say, okay, mind means some ideas, some thoughts in there. And because we have not really seriously thought or inspected the processes and things that are happening in the mind. We are using the mind to explore and know things outside the world. We're very good at that. But what it is, how it functions, what are the processes that are happening, the dynamics of it, how does that consciousness illumines the thoughts, and the thoughts, the mind engages with the senses, and the senses go out and collect information, how that information is processed into knowledge, knowledge is brought out into meaning, meaning again brings out some intelligence, and all those things are happening in the mind space. So today I'll just take a little bit of digression and try to see if I can throw some light on this that will help us when we take up the subject of the Atman, the Ch13. So let us say mind space is a space in which things are happening. In Sanskrit, when the whole universe is described, we say there are three types of spaces. Okay, one is called Maha Akasha. The second is called Chit Akasa, Chit, and the third one is called Chid Akasha, Chid. So Mahakasha is the space that we are experiencing all the time, in which we are, the body is there, in which this solar system, planets and everything, material objects are there. Chit Akasha is the mind space, mental space. What are the contents of that Chit Akasha? Ideas, thoughts, those things that we are experiencing within us, emotions, likes, dislikes, knowledge, ignorance, all those things are happening in a very, very fast way. So it's not like a physical space, the space in a room in which you have various things around. It's a static type of space. It's not moving here and there. But the mind space is a very dynamic space. A lot of activities happening very, very fast, so fast that sometimes we are having difficulty keeping a track of it. It's just like dizzy, you get dizzy. One thought before, just as one thought ends, another one jumps onto it, and then it just goes, takes you all over the world on a world tour. So let us have a look at what happens in there. Imagine the mind space to be a space. So let us put a space type of thing, though there is no boundary. So this would be like my mind space. Okay, my mind space, but that space is part of the universal space. So this is like my microcosm. Just like when you have built a house, you have a house space. The space is limitless, extending beyond beyond where you can see. But when we put a boundary around it, then we call this is my space, my office space, my house space, and this is all that, my personal space, and all those things. So the boundary defines our space, but in itself is undivided. So that's a very space is a very good example, or the nearest it can come to what is consciousness, because it's at a subtle level. Just to give an example what it is like, for example, if you have a football, a solid ball, when you move it, the whole matter moves from one place to the other. So it's relocated from one place to the other. When you have a balloon and you blow into it, what you blow into is so much air that is now bounded by the rubber boundary of the balloon. And when the balloon moves, the air moves along with that. But space is also inside the balloon. When the balloon moves, the space is not moving around it. So space is immovable. Everything is contained in it. It is the container, and everything is content in there. So consciousness is said to be the ultimate container in which all Chit Akasha and the Maha Akasha are contained. Likewise, we have got this mind space in which there are various types of ideas, thoughts, and all those things that are there. They are the objects of the mind. So imagine, of course, there are three types. We can broadly classify three types of mind according to the three gunas. Okay, so imagine there are three pieces of glasses. Okay, and first one is heavily tinted. Okay, so it's dark gray, what you call, and when light is shining into that, the light doesn't go through, it absorbs it. That would be an example of a tamasic mind. When tamas is predominant, then the light of consciousness, which is ever present inside us, for some reason, it, I've lost the connection there, I think. Yeah, the light of consciousness that shines through, it is absorbed. So if you have a tinted glass, you cannot see what's beyond that. That is an example of a tamasic mind. The second, so this is a tamas. Tamas is more predominant there. The rajasic mind, when the rajas is there, what happens in there? It forms a film of, it is colored by itself. So when the light of consciousness shines into that, what happens? The color of that glass influences the light that comes in. So if white light is passing from the left, the glass is yellow. On the right hand side, you get yellow light. So a mind that is very rajasic is full of ideas and thoughts, impressions, likes, dislikes, prejudices, whatever is there. And when the light of consciousness shines through it, it gets colored by the content or the nature of the mind. And you actually, your judgment, your opinion, your feedback, and everything is there is based on the content of the mind. Most of the time people are not aware of this coloring that happens, and they straight away go and conclude in a very confident objective way that they are seeing the world objectively, and very conclusively they say that person is like that, or I saw it, definitely it's like that. They are not saying that there is something there, but I have superimposed so much of my views and ideas and opinions and all those things on what I am seeing. That discrimination, if it is not there, then we come to a false or misunderstanding of things that are there. So it's very important that we have some deep understanding of the process that happens in our mind space. That's why this type of discussion is important. Otherwise, we will not be able to rectify the error that we learn ourselves, and very strongly conclusively we come to an opinion view. We can have an argument and all those things, little knowing that that same other person is also expressing a view that is colored by his or her thoughts and ideas and views and opinions, and the two do not match, and therefore we have a disagreement or an argument or confrontation or whatever is there. So none of them are seeing the same thing alike. Both of them are coloring that object with their own views and opinions. That's why, as we meditate, as we learn develop that capacity of introspection and reflection, and understanding what's happening in our own minds and thoughts and contents, then that subtle mind will reveal to you, to us ourselves, oh, that was just an opinion. It's not the truth. Both of us do not understand the reality. We are just seeing a representation of that reality, or whatever object is there, colored by our own thoughts, words, and deeds. We are mostly human beings trapped in this situation. Not a very good situation, but we are prisoners of our views, opinions, and our own mind. Not very good. That type of mind will not lead us to freedom. Then what will lead us to freedom? And that's where we come to the third one, the sattvic mind, the pure mind. And what's the nature of that mind? Well, it's also a piece of glass, you might say, but it's more like a mirror. It has got a film of reflective material at the back of it. So let us put something like that. How do I put some? Okay, so there's a reflective material that is put on the back of that. And what happens is, when the light of consciousness falls on that, it bounces back. So now you are standing in front of a mirror. Okay, you're not looking to a heavily tinted glass. You don't see anything. You're not looking through a colored glass and you're seeing things outside which is colored by the color of the glass. Now, the purpose of you standing in front of the mirror is to see yourself. You see your own image there. Depending on the how good that reflection is, how good that mirror is, your own reflection will be coming back to you accordingly. And so, when the Atman wants to know itself, not know the world outside, not know the things outside, when it wants to know itself, it needs something like this which can reflect its own glories. It doesn't require a Rajasic mind which colors the light and sends it outwards, is not of much value. What it wants is a reflective mind. So that reflective mind is called the buddhi, and that's why it comes from sattva guna. So for spiritual striving, aiming for self-realization, this sattvic, pure, reflective mind is indispensable. That is the tool. And much of the sadhana part that goes in doing japa and meditation and all those things is trying to develop this purity of mind so that you have this reflective mind in which the Nava can see a better reflection of itself. The rest is about the sadhana part is about that. So, of course, the reflection is not you. Okay, we are a living being out there. The reflection is dependent on me. If I move away from the mirror, the reflection is not there anymore. So that is one part. I am the subject, the object is dependent on me. Secondly, the reflection is not a total representation or doesn't represent me correctly. For example, if I raise my right hand, the reflection raises its left hand. So, while in some ways it gives me an idea of who I am, at the same time, it has this problem that it distorts or contradicts, turns it around. And most of the time, most people would not know that that reflection has taken place. So, in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, when avidya, ignorance, is defined, it is said that ignorance is that by which we misrepresent or misunderstand that which is impermanent to be permanent, anityam to be nityam, that which is asukham, which is misery, to be happiness, that which is insentient, it doesn't have any vitality or consciousness of its own, to be having that consciousness. Anatma is taken to be Atma, and Anityam, Asukham. So these are the changes are happening. It's just like the left has become right, but you do not know what it is there. And so a jiva who is really considering himself to be an image in the mirror, that's how we are. God made man in his image. So we are the experience. I'm a body, I'm a mind, I'm an ego, is the experience of the image in the mirror in which the left has become right and he's not aware of it. And he takes this body to be real. He takes misery to be happiness. He takes this inert, lifeless body which is without any consciousness to be of consciousness. And this type of confusion that has happened is what is called avidya. So this is a good example to understand where we are, because unless we do a good diagnosis of our illness, we will not know how to treat ourselves. And this is what we call, with the help of the scriptures, we try to do a proper analysis of our health. Not on the physical health, I'm talking about the spiritual health. To be healthy means to be established in our Atman nature, Swastha. That's why in Sanskrit or Hindi, when people want to inquire out of courtesy about somebody, how is your health, they will say, Aapka swasth kaisa hai? Aap swasth hain? Swastha. Are you anchored or established in your own spiritual self? That is the actual question. It's a very spiritual question. But when we don't have that understanding, we might take somebody is just inquiring about our physical health and we reply, yes, I'm pretty fine, I'm good. So it's not only about the spiritual health, it's about the mental health, emotional health, and physical health. All these are included in the idea of total health. By the way, that is the definition of health according to the WHO: physical, mental, emotional, moral, and spiritual. That total health is there. So its source is the way to bring or promote that happiness, that health, is to be more and more grounded in our Atman nature, spiritual nature. And that's what Bhagavad Gita is trying to teach. That was the problem with Arjuna, even though he was very physically very well and strong, mentally okay, well educated and everything he was, but there was some problem in that crisis situation before the battle started. He was so confused and depressed, Arjun Vishadega, and he wanted to run away from his duty of life as a warrior and all those things. Sri Krishna, as a spiritual doctor, diagnosed that he needs this particular knowledge and experience about his Atman nature so that he can see and the role or integrate himself with this higher dimension of his being. And that's what Bhagavad Gita is all about. He introduces the concept of the Atman, then he talks about the Sthita Prajna, a person who is established in that steady wisdom or knowledge of the Atman in chapter 2. And then he talks about the various yogas, about how to bring about that integration, karma, bhakti, jnana, dhyana, and all that. And in the last third of the Bhagavad Gita, he sort of gives us a analysis using these three gunas about analyzing ourselves, how we are constituted according to the predominance of a particular guna, rajas, sattva, and tamas, and all those type of things. He also introduces another idea there of the supreme being, the Paramatman, of whom the Jivatman is a reflector, and the actual every activity is done by the Paramatman, and the method of devotion or the path of devotion is to surrender the Jivatma to the Paramatma, and Sri Krishna himself is the representation or embodiment or incarnation of that supreme being. So all those ideas are there. So it's all about promoting health, but total health. And where would that health come from? What it's all dependent so much on the mind. We talked about a tamasic mind. The light of consciousness is there, intelligence is there, but it's not shining out. It reminds me of a little story, incident that we read in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Of course, as the Dakshineshwar temple where Sri Ramakrishna is to stay. It is a very large space, and of course, a lot of many people, gardeners and cleaners and all those people. So there was this gardener, and he was cutting all this grass. But at home, he had a cow. So he thought, rather than throwing this grass away, he will bundle that up and take it home and feed his cow and get good milk. So he started collecting that and he put it in a big bag, and there was so much grass, and he kept on, out of greed, did not know where to stop. He filled it so much and made such a big bundle that when he was trying to lift it up, he could not raise it on top of his head. And Sri Ramakrishna said, he observed and said, there's so much intelligence inside and so much ignorance outside. That means within all of us, that Atman is ever present there. But it is that tamasic nature now. He is totally overpowered by greed and everything. That's a characteristic of tamas, that he does not know how to apply that intelligence. And of course, so that's an example of a tamasic one. Rajasic, we very much aware of it. Our thoughts, ideas, and everything color. What we want is a sattvic mind in which the buddhi factor has been awakened, and in that mind, the light of consciousness that comes from within us, instead of going out, it sort of bounces back. And in that, the person is able to see himself and says, oh, that is a likeness of me, but that's only an image of me. No matter how good that reflector is, that will always be a image of me. That is not me. That means if the mirror breaks, I don't get shattered, type of thing. You don't go and shave somebody in the mirror. If you shave, you can't shave that. The change has to be made in the subject, not in the object, type of thing. But that intelligence will develop to such maturity where that person's understanding would ripen, and they would know how to approach that being. Or basically, you already are that being. No matter how good a reflection you'll put, that will always be a reflection. That's why it is called self-realization. It is self-knowledge is not the right word. Knowledge is something that's happening in the mind space. Self-realization, I am what I am. That is the reality. I am the reality. So the reason I took you all through this detour about this three mind is that, look, so far what we've been discussing in these 10-12 verses are the objective world, the kshetra, the field. And if we say this is this box that I'm showing here, the green box, is the consciousness. Last time I had drew another drawing which was not 100% accurate. So let me rectify this. So this box is pure consciousness. And where is that consciousness? Is it only at the top or is it all over? It is all over. The other drawing I was showing is manifestation. The top was there, and then mind space was there, and then gross it became like that. So it's all over. What happens is that when Prakriti or manifestation happens, it gets covered. And how does it get covered? It gets covered not like last time I drew it, more like a triangle. That means in this drawing, if I draw a line here across and say I'm at this level looking here at this side, then there are two parts. This is pure consciousness and this is Prakriti. And together they add up the total reality. The pure consciousness is all over, but Prakriti covers it. At the highest level, so let us say have a couple of levels around here, and this represents different planes of consciousness. So level 1, level 2, and as you come down, level 3, and right down here, level 4. So in level 4, most of that consciousness has been covered. It's there, but it has been covered. That could be a stone or a plant. So this is what is revealed. So a little bit of movement of the plant and this that is happening there, a worm or insect is there. And the rest is now covered in that inertia in there. The totality is still there. It's not that it has become lost or something, it's just covered. That's why Maya is supposed, is a covering. Avaran Shakti. Avaran means it covers something. In level 3, that some evolution has happened. The being, whatever Jiva is there, it has taken another body, another form, and now it could be an animal like a cow or something in there, in which we find that the degree of pure consciousness is a little bit more and the covering has become a little less, but it's still there. In level 2, it could be a human being, in which the element, the component of pure consciousness is even more, and therefore in us we can see these powers of reasoning, understanding, thinking, planning, and all those things, which is not maybe so much manifest in the lower forms, and still the covering is there, and this is the body and all the things. Mind is also part of it. And level 1, it could be a divine form, a god or something. He still has a form, but he is all shining in knowledge, shining in consciousness. That's why when they represent these divine forms, they show a hell of light around the head. That's the light of intelligence that is shining through. So in this green box is called Prakriti, nature. That is the differentiated. Means at the highest level, the differentiation is very little. Okay, here. But as you go down, it becomes more and more dense, more and more thick. Here is in the middle is there. So this probably is a better representation of this. So the first verse of the chapter 13 was idam shariram kaunteya kshetram iti abhidhiyate etad choveti. That is the one who is the knower of this is called the kshetrajna. So the green box outside, the first box, that is the kshetrajna. It's the all-pervading reality, the substratum of the whole universe. And this green triangle is the Kshetra. Idam Shariram, this body is considered, is called the Kshetra. Is it only the physical body that is called the Kshetra? No. All the three bodies, because Mahabhutani Ahankara Buddhi Avyaktam Evacha. So Buddhi Avyakta means the non-manifest, where the three gunas are at the highest level. Non-manifest is there. Buddhi comes below that, and I sense comes and all this. And then by the time it comes down here are the five great elements. Everything in nature, from the Brahmaloka down to the lowest plane, that is the field in which all this experience is happening. And what is the pure consciousness? It is present right through. When the two come together, when the Kshetra and Kshetrajna interact, that's where this jivahood is experienced. The I sense comes. Chit, Jada, Granthi. So this green square is called Chit, you might say, pure consciousness. And Jada is metta. Granthi is when you tie a knot. So when the two come together, they begin to interact one with one each other. And this is how this sense of an ego comes. So ego that we feel, ahamkara, is chit jada granthi, and all of us have that ego. In a plant has it, a little insect has it, a cow has it, man has it, a god also has it. All of have a sense of individuality and personality that is formed when the prakriti, the internal nature, interacts with the pure consciousness. And this coming together and binding is what is called bondage and samsara. And liberation means disentanglement, disengagement. So that's why this chapter is called Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Vibhaga means separation. How do I experience myself as I am? That means as pure consciousness, not as associated with this body-mind complex. And every time we let this ego and the mind and its ideas and thoughts and the qualities of the body, its weight, its height, its gender, and all those things superimpose and cover the Atman nature, that is promoting the continuation of this state in which we are caught in samsara. So what's the antidote to this? Okay, reassert our true nature and say, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the thoughts, I am not the ideas, I am only an observer of these things. I am the illuminator of all these things, but I am that infinite existence, knowledge, bliss. That is my real identity. In this age, people say, I identify myself with this or that. And what we should really identify ourselves is with this Atman nature. Everything promotes only ignorance. So, in the second part, so that the first category was all this Kshetra was described, which is the green triangle that I showed there. And behind that is the Kshetrajna, which will be discussed next. In between, Sri Krishna talked about that mind space. Okay, in that space, certain things were there. So, what were those? Amanitvam, Adambhitvam, Ahimsa, Shanti, Rarjavam, Acharyo, Pashanam, Saucham, Sthiryam, Atma, Vinigraha, and all those other verses are talking about a different type, a particular category of content of the mind space. So, if this is the external world, and up is the source of consciousness, pure consciousness, if you say that's the light is coming through, and here you've got the ears and the eyes and the nose and the tongue and the skin, and this light of consciousness passes through this mind space. The mind space I have described, there could be three categories: tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. Accordingly, amount of light that will percolate and flow through, and it passes through the eyes and it goes out and sees things, and all the sense experience happens. The world also reacts on us and distorts and makes some change in the mind space, and these are our thoughts and ideas. So these in the mind space, this energy is making some changes, and those thoughts are called vrittis. Vritti, actually, somewhere it is said it is like a wave. thought wave, but a better example would be a whirlpool. So imagine there's a pond, the water is there. If there is no movement and everything is still, then no disturbance, then there are no whirlpools. But when it begins to flow, and like in a river, but if the embankments have rocks and stones, they disturb the flow of the water, and you find what we call this eddy currents flowing in a circle like this, like that. So imagine that every time some energy enters into us, energy here means light energy, sound energy through the ears, etc. That energy will make some change. The capacity to do work, to make a change, is called energy. In physics, we say. So this is going to make a change. Are all the energies in the same format? No. So if a whirlpool is there, let's use a little bit of physics again. The whirlpool can be in two directions. It can be anti-clockwise, or it can be clockwise. So in the mind space, there are two types of whirlpools are created. If you say that is the equator, okay, now that's a good example. You know, in cyclones happen, or if you observe the flow of water in a sink in the northern hemisphere, it's not the same as in the southern hemisphere. And the direction of a cyclone in the southern hemisphere is opposite to that of the northern hemisphere. So here you've got two types of flows there, and that those vrittis, the eddy currents in the mind that are formed by the material object, let us say they are flowing in anti-clockwise direction, and those that are reflective of the Atman, they are the ones that are flowing in the clockwise direction. That means it depends what is the subject matter of that idea. The thought is there. If the subject matter is something out of this gross world, material world, then that energy flows in opposite direction. And those eddy currents then keep on adding themselves to each other. So if you think of something, then you think of something more, keep on thinking about it. At some point, it will become very strong, and it's now a roaring whirlpool in which we get sucked in. So if you see in chapter 2, Sri Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna how when we give a mind to something external, dhyayate vishayang pungsa sangatteshu upajayate, that means vishaya means external object. If you keep on thinking of some external object, what will happen? A little bit of liking and attachment will come through that. So you're driving to work, and you see an iPhone being advertised on the roadside. First day you ignore, second day you ignore, third day you want to look at it a little bit. Then after some time, a desire comes, sangat sanjayate kama. Okay, I want to have that. So the desire comes. That means the whirlpool is sucking your mind into it. And then sangat sanjayate kama, kamat krodho bhi aa jata. So if the child goes and asks his father, can I have that? The father says no. The reaction is anger. Okay, that means there's a very strong desire to have something, and whatever blocks that desire, the reaction to that is an anger. And then it goes on. Sri Krishna explains how that mind getting caught in that whirlpool, loses this sense of discrimination, does something that is wrong, which is very harmful, and ultimately it comes to the conclusion, total destruction of pranashati. That is the fate of a whirlpool or energy to do with an external world. That is why it's called Vishaya. It is poisonous. It kills us without knowing us. It traps us in this body and mind. It will bring us back to this world again because of the nature of that energy. We are not managing it well. Because the subject matter is something external. But if the Atman itself is a subject matter, internal subject, so every time we talk and think and read a scripture, reflect about who I am, the moment you say, who am I? That question has you or me as a subject matter. It's not different from saying, what is that person? What is that tree? What is that star or planet? That is an external world. Here we want an internal subject matter. And that's where the spiritual inquiry starts. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's the meaning and purpose of this life? And all those things. When you begin to ask those small questions, who am I? 3 words only. Okay, but you keep on putting it off because the mind is going out so much. When that question possesses you and said, I know so many things of this external world through my education and through my research and everything, and now Mr. Google knows even more, and artificial intelligence also even does more. Of course, sometimes it tells you the wrong information there here nowadays, so it's not so intelligent. But we are so obsessed with this external world. Now, all those type of things in this in the chapter 13 have been given a particular label, a category. So after describing all those ideas and concepts, amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, shanti, rarjavam, that means those are this clockwise, positive, dharmic, righteous uh, things we should do to promote our spiritual being. All those things come. So let us say they are the positive samskaras, positive ideas there. And if we keep on building that, eventually all of them will combine together and make a nice large whirlpool that will begin to propel us in the spiritual direction and that lifts us up. The blue one drags us down. So we have to be very, very careful what we engage our mind with. That discrimination has to be there, knowing that there are consequences. It might be very interesting and attractive, but it can already do more harm to the dangers because already the mind is so much conditioned by the external world. Now, through spiritual practice, japa and meditation, we are trying to generate this new positive clockwise spiritual samskaras and ideas, which will then lift us up towards the source. So, in chapter 13, the second category of ideas that were there, they were talked up here. They were called, Sri Krishna says, these are jnana. Why? Their subject matter is the internal Atman. As opposed to the external world, sense-bound ideas that normally the mind is going out to. So he said, all these things that I have described, you can categorize them as jnana. Other things apart from this, know them to be ajnana, ignorance. That means this downward, anti-clockwise type of vrittis, material world, sense-bound changes that are happening there. So now if we say how the same thing, Sri Ramakrishna says, he says, to know the one thing is true knowledge. To know many things is ignorance. To know many things is ignorance, he says. To know the one thing means your own self, or Atma self, that is true knowledge. But when we don't have this proper understanding and definition, then if somebody has read a lot of books and done a lot of research and has got a lot of information in his head, we say that person is so knowledgeable, and all these suffixes come after his name, PhD, this and that, whatever is there. But all that is classified as ignorance. And to make that point very strong, Sri Ramakrishna says, okay, what happens in here? These are like zeros. You put another zero, I'm writing on top behind. That is, the value still remains zero, remains zero, remains zero until somewhere one comes. It is only when the one comes, then adding zero to it gives value. 1 with a 0 after it makes 10, another 0 every time there's a tenfold increase. But without that self-knowledge, everything is ignorance. So that is a sort of shocking sort of realization for many people. Maybe we think we are all very knowledgeable, educated, and all those type of things. But when you put all that knowledge together without that one self-knowledge, it is a bit of ignorance, mostly. More ignorant, we might say. So how do we introduce this self-knowledge? This is the Kshetrajna, the Nava. How do I know the Nava? Of course, these are only vrittis. If we have these jnana vrittis, they will reflect the glory of the Atman, that is reflective nature. If we have got this ajnana vrittis, the light of consciousness simply flows through, through that and gets caught out there, and basically you become all drained out, and you find an old man where all the energy has been dissipated because he did not know how to manage that energy within himself. Let it go out through the senses. So that's why the first steps of spirituality is yama and niyama, do's and don'ts. Don't let that energy dissipate through the senses to the external. With minimum, whatever is necessary, that must do, but not go on to that crazy running after the world type of thing. Then what do? Harness that energy. Okay, those are the niyamas. And then sadhana is what transforms that energy into a higher energy, into a spiritual energy. And that energy then uplifts the person or brings about that disconnection with this body. Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Vibhaga Yoga. And that is the mechanics of it. As far as possible, we can explain a little bit of science and all those things. With this background, if we now go back to the sutras, the verses, and you'll find that maybe it might make a little bit of sense when Sri Krishna is trying to explain to us the nature of the Atman. And so let's have a look at that now. So, okay. So he says, Geyam yat tat pravakshami yad jatva amritam asnute anadimat param brahma na tat sannasa uchyate. I shall speak of that which is to be known, by realizing which one attains immortality. So the goal is set. That's the motivation. That is the purpose why we are going, because we are all seekers of immortality. Not that immortality will be given to us, the Atman already is immortal, but because of the superimposition of the qualities of the changing world, body-mind complex on the Atman is now thinking it is changing, it is born, it lives, it becomes old, it dies, and all those type of things. Really, nothing happens to the Atman. It never comes, it goes. In India, some people, very poor people or low caste people, were called to be untouchables. You don't want to touch them physically because people felt that that get polluted. But this Atman is also totally untouchable. The world cannot touch it. All your samskaras, karmas, everything can happen on the screen, like a movie you see in the cinema hall. But when the movie is over, the screen is perfectly still, unaffected by all changes. Sri Ramakrishna gives another example, beautiful example. In a room, you light some fire and suddenly there's so much smoke and you feel that the space air has been polluted. You can't see, you can't smell very clearly. And say, oh, this space is all very cloudy and smoky and not good. You open the windows and the smoke dries out, flies out, moves out, and the space is seen to be in its pristine purity as before. That means it seemed that the smoke had polluted it, but really the space was not contaminated. So that's how a sadhaka will try to conceive of himself. He will say, it seems by my thoughts, my deeds, my karma, which is of virtue and vice, papa and punya, my mind has become polluted or conditioned by all these changes. But really, those conditioning of the mind does not in any way affect the purity of the Atman. That means one should never feel that I'm a sinner, I'm doomed, and all those type of things forever. No, there are some changes that happen in my mind that has covered the pristine beauty and glory of my Atman nature. That will be washed away, but that really does not make any difference to my essential nature. Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta. That's how the Upanishad says. Nitya means eternal. Shuddha means pure. Absolute pristine purity cannot be contaminated at all. Shuddha Buddha is ever full of consciousness, intelligence. It gets covered, but it is present there all the time. And Mukta, ever free. It's not that the Atman gets bound. It is the bondage of the body. The body comes and goes. The mind feels all the changes happening. All these changes are happening not in me. I am the Ch13, the Nava, the light of consciousness. My light falls on these things, and in my ignorance, I see the reflection and I think I am the reflection in the mirror. Really, take the mirror away, break the mirror, nothing happens to me. That type of understanding, again and again, we have to bring that type of thinking. And that is that clockwise knowledge type of vrittis. The more we think about it, in meditation, we say, I am not the body and mind, I visualize the presence of the divine, I contemplate on the qualities, characteristics of the divine. We take the help of some divine incarnation or some God as our anchor in there. And what we're trying to do repeatedly by processing using the energy of the mantra and the knowledge is to create these clockwise spiritual vrittis in there until they gather such a momentum that they are now undoing the work of the anti-clockwise vrittis there, and that's how they become neutralized. Okay, so one must know what binds us and what frees us. If a screw has been drilled into the wall and somebody is given a screwdriver and he's asked to do something with it, if he's a carpenter or somebody knows, he knows which way to turn that will free us and which way will bind us. So, likewise, we also need to know what type of vrittis will free us and what type of vrittis will bind us to this body-mind complex. And the scriptures try to give us that knowledge, and then we try to use that to free ourselves. So, what is that? The Supreme Brahman, the Atman, is without beginning, it's beyond time. It is neither being or non-being. And then, so the next verse here talks about this word sarvata comes. Sarvata. Panipadam tat sarvata akshi shiromukham sarvata shrutimaloke sarvam avritya tishtati. Sarvata means everywhere. So basically, the theme or the central idea of this particular verse is to talk about the all-pervasiveness of the Atman. Sarvata is everywhere. Okay, so the light is everywhere, but we can't see that light directly. What we can see is only its reflection. So I gave the example, if I take a torchlight and point it up in the sky and ask you, is it on or off? You said, I don't know. Can you point it to the tree or something? And if I point to a tree and the light falls on a branch and bounces back, and this person says, now I know the light is on. So we are trained to see things through reflections only, not see the light itself. Okay, so the sun throws lights in all directions. Do you see that light surrounding the sun? No, around that sun you see all dark space. We don't see that light. It's only when it directly enters into us from the source, or when it bounces something like a moon and bounces to us, then we say that object is what sort of gives an idea about the luminosity of the sun. Likewise, we are the self-luminous being here and now, but we are needing a mirror, a reflector to discover ourselves. And that no matter how good a reflector it is, how many it is, they will never do full justice and to the glory of the Atman. At some point, the Jiva, after many attempts, coming into this world, trying to manifest the infinite things, understands that it is not possible. And then it gives up that attempt. That giving up of that attempt to try to manifest the infinite things, trying to find happiness in something where happiness is not there, that is called vairagya. And that is a turning point of spirituality. When a person's intelligence has developed to such an extent where he has been able to understand that whatever I am seeking, the world will never be able to give to me, whether in this loka or even Brahma loka. Then he abandons all that attempt And what does he discover? He is always what he was. In ignorance, he was trying to capture his own glory in something external. So, here, this all pervasiveness, sarvata panipadam tat, know that noble has hands and feet everywhere, has eyes, heads, and mouth everywhere, which has ears everywhere, exists in creatures by pervading them all. That means it's omnipresent in all things. That is, but we don't see it as it is. We need something to reveal its presence. Okay, for example, in a room, somebody says, okay, there was a power outage, and somebody will ask a question, has the power come back? Well, you can't go and see in the power socket and say, the electricity is there, I can see. No, you don't see that. What you need to do is switch something on. And if the light bulb comes, switches on, then you say, yes, electricity has come. That means we do not see the electricity directly, but we see its manifestation, and from that we conclude that there is there. So when a person is alive or dead, suppose he's lying very quiet and somebody is not very sure whether he's alive, so call the doctor, and what does the doctor do? He is going to try to see if there is any manifestation of that consciousness in that person. So he checks the heartbeat and the breath and touches and checks the temperature. These manifestations, if they're absent, he comes to a conclusion that, oh, he has gone, samate. So like that, uh, what we say means we never know the being that is inside us. What we see is the glory of that being, how he functions through the body, how he thinks through the mind, and all these things are there. But somehow we think that we know that person. Oh, that's my husband, this is my wife, and this and that, all those things. And that jiva then departs from that body, and the body is left behind. Then you ask that person, so you lived with this person for 50 years, 100 years. Do you know who was there? He said, no, I thought I know. All you need is how he was functioning through this body and mind, behavior and everything. But who was that being whom you called your mother and father and all those things? You have absolutely no clue. The Atman is nameless and formless. How it behaves through the body-mind complex, that's a drama we see. We don't see the reality. It's very important to discriminate that we never see the reality through our mind or through our senses. What is happening in the mind space is only a representation of that. And that representation is not the thing in itself. And therefore, we should always try to discriminate. And we say, we should use a more precise language. It appears to me. That would be the right language. There's an appearance you are seeing. But you should not say, I see that person. That appears to me. It seems to be like that. But that appearance and seeming is something that's happening in our mind space and colored by my thinking, all those things. That would be a more accurate way of talking about things. It appears to be me like this, and it appears to be different to another person. We can have our different appearances because we come from different perspectives, watch things from, but all fine. None of us know the thing as it is, because that reality is a subject. It's not an object to be known. So that is the sort of background, to which Sri Krishna is going to lead us to. Again, here in the next verse 14, he says, Sarvendriya gunabhasam sarvendriya vivarjitam asaktam sarvabhrichayava nirgunam gunabhoktricha, shining through the functions of all the organs. So the organs are there. How do you know the Atman is there? Well, are the eyes seeing or not? Okay, if they're seeing, then we infer that the Atman is there. The light of consciousness is there. If not, you go and touch somebody and you speak loudly to in his ears and he doesn't respond, and none of the senses function, none of the organs are functioning also, then we conclude that the electricity has been switched off and now everything will become cold. So we infer the presence of the Atman, but we never see the Atman. So Sarve Indriya Gunabhasam, shining through the functions of all the organs. What are the organs? The five sense organs, and also the organs of action and organs of knowledge, and the mind itself. Yet it is devoid of all organs. Does the Atman have eyes, ears? No, the body has got eyes and ears. The Atman uses them for some perception. And therefore it is unattached. The Atman, just like the electricity is unattached to the light bulb. Okay, so if you break the light bulb, you don't say now the electricity has been destroyed. It's just that the electricity has now lost a medium through which it was expressing itself. So likewise, it is totally unattached, and verily it is the support of all. Without the electricity, the fan, the light doesn't move. So that is the support, and it is without any gunas, and yet the passiva of the gunas. What are the gunas? The three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. Atman is that big square that I talked about. It's the background of it. This was the triangle, that was the prakriti. They are two different things. The prakriti lies on top of the Atman, and when they come together, it creates this confusion and misunderstanding, and that is called ignorance. And that is what is this jivahood, this bondage, this ignorance by which we have become identified and entangled in this uh, human existence. But in man, a degree of sattva has come where he starts discriminating, and they have the means to free himself from this entanglement. And that's the theme of the Bhagavad Gita, which Sri Krishna is trying to tell us, that this predicament in which we have found ourselves, bound prisoners of body, mind, and everything, is not the high state of being. The high state of being is when we abide in our own self, and the divine consciousness, which is the Ch13, now and then appears in the midst of humanity as an incarnation of the divine to show the pathway to that the supreme state, Paramdham, supreme peace, which is our natural abode. And that's how Sri Krishna, Rama, Ramakrishna, Buddha, Christ, and all these great teachers came and taught based on their own inner experience of their Atmanhood. So today we had a bit of a discussion and a digression, but I thought that would have been useful to understand this mind space. Please reflect on those couple of ideas. The three natures of the mind. The tamasic is the like the tinted glass, light doesn't go through. Rajasic is the colored glass, where it imparts its own color to the light and mixes things up. What we want is the sattvic mind, the reflective mind, which is like a mirror. It has to have a film that will bounce that light back to itself. And so with the help of that image, the Atman is now able to get a hint of who he is, and he says, who am I? That's where the inquiry starts. He looks up the scriptures, where the great teachers have come and given the indication how is that written path to be traversed, and we are looking at what is called those reflections, what is called the Kshetrajna. These verses 14, 15, 16, 17, I think up to 17, Sri Krishna talks about that reflection, what is being reflected in the mirror in a pure mind, so to say, as much as possible. That is, the subject matter is the Atman, the self. And what is the nature? That will be described through so many adjectives and descriptions. Remember, the description is not the thing itself. The description is only those ideas in the mind there. But they reflect and give some indication of what is to be sought. So, by understanding all the Gita, memorizing the Upanishad, you will not become enlightened. You will have so many ideas about the Atman. Enlightenment will come when the self abides in itself, when all the vrittis of the mind become totally pacified. That state is called yoga. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. First verse of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. That is what we are trying to do. So we have got this worldly anti-clockwise vrittis. You do a lot of sadhana, do all this japa, meditation, and yama and yama and everything. Create a tremendous, powerful clockwise vrittis, which counteracts the negative ones. And now the tendency or the direction of the mind is going inwards. That is what spiritual sadhana is about. And at some point, that mind will be able to totally detach itself from this body, from the senses, and in that pure mind, the glory of the Atman is revealed, and the mind itself will become mindless. And the Atman is a nobody. And that's what we really are. But all of us want to be somebody. That's where the problem is. Okay, so we have come to our end of class today. And let us finish our discussions by offering this to Sri Ramakrishna.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti